Welcome, everybody. We have a really amazing team here today. Let me go from my left to my right and back and forth. We have on my left my dear friend and co-author and colleague, Professor Sergio Pecorelli, who is the Chancellor Emeritus of Brescia University in Italy and an adjunct professor of medicine at Yale University, plus countless other distinctions. And Professor Pecorelli is an expert. He's recently been awarded for his work on oncology, reproductive oncology, but he's a pioneer in the area of the first 1,000 days of life and how what happens in the first 1,000 days of life influences the adult life, the grandchildren's life, and particularly in this case, mental wellness. To my right is Dr. Cassandra Vieten, who is the director of the John W. Brick Foundation for Mental Health. And Cassie is a distinguished author in her own right in the area of mind-body wellness, integrative healthcare, and has published a number of books as well as research in this field of mind-body medicine, and now in her role as director of the John W. Brick Foundation is supporting research on mental health, exercise, and integrative wellness pathways. Thank you for being here, Cassie. On my far right is another dear friend, Chicco Tatriele. Chicco is the co-founder with his beloved wife, Lara Tatriele, in the front here, of Fivelements Puri Ahimsa, which is started in Bali and then has opened as an urban retreat in Hong Kong. And they've won so many awards that I could spend the whole session reading them out to you. But they've been pioneers, and the great thing is that they've pioneered from passion, from deep conviction in traditional Asian pathways to well-being, mental wellness, and they haven't followed anything except an inner impulse. And this is extremely powerful in their pioneering work. On the far left is my dear friend and vice chair of the Mental Wellness Initiative, Elena Hernandez. Elena has been a huge strength to me and to the team in doing the work, preparing our white paper on mental wellness. And Elena today is standing in for Dr. Renee Moorfield, who is chair of the Wellness at Work initiative of the Global Wellness Institute. Renee and her husband David, who some of you will know from previous summits, was driving to Denver Airport and was involved in a very bad car crash on her way to come to the summit. And they had to cancel. Their car was completely written off. Luckily, they were not seriously injured, but they've both sustained spinal injuries and are not able to travel. So our thoughts and hearts are with them. Renee it's been like a near-death experience for Renee, and she's asking, what should I be doing with purpose in this life that I have? So she's with us very much in spirit and intent, and Elena will be reading the points that Renee has prepared. I'd like to start with, our topic is mental wellness, from private lives to public health, from the personal to the community. And I'd like to ask Professor Pecorelli, caro Sergio, to begin the panel.
Thank you, Gerry, and good afternoon to all of you. My task is pretty simple. I just want to stress one important thing, and that is the fact that the future of an individual's health, mental health, and mental wellness may be affected profoundly during the developmental process. In a few words, since the beginning of life. But not only the beginning of life, of a new life, but even before. That is in the preconception period. We know today very well that epigenetics upon germ cells, that is, upon the sperm and upon the eggs, is incredibly important. I just give you an example. If a man who wants to conceive, for about 180 days before conceiving, practices physical activity, good nutrition, let's say good lifestyles and behaviors, the chances that the future child and the future adult is going to have very few mental problems are really scanty. And this is incredibly important. Not only, but it has been demonstrated, for instance, that 150 minutes a week for 24 weeks of a physical exercise of a person who is going to conceive is going to impact upon the genes that have to do with diseases like Parkinson's disease or like schizophrenia, for instance. Then during pregnancy, of course. And here, the behavior and the lifestyles of the mother are extremely important for the neurodevelopment. And the same also holds in another way after pregnancy, and that is the cultural environment in which, in the first 2 years of life, the child is raised, and his relationship with the parents, and especially with the mother. So in essence, if we think what we could do during that period of life upon what will be not only the neurodevelopment in itself and the functioning of the brain, but also the health and the wellness, mentally speaking, well, I think that, in fact, we could start very early, and I give you the word.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Sergio has elaborated on this in the section on the first 1,000 days of life in our white paper on mental wellness, which you can download as a PDF from the Mental Wellness Initiative website. But this is stunning research, really, isn't it? That the health of the next generation can be completely influenced and optimized by the exercise of the father for a few months before conception, and the healthy lifestyle of the mother during pregnancy, and the optimal care of the child in the first year or so of life. Shouldn't everybody know this, really? And this is really the beginning of lifespan wellness. We tend to think about adult wellness, resorts, destinations, and so on, but this is lifespan wellness that we all should really take on board. I'd like to ask Dr. Cassandra Vieten, Cassie, if you would follow up, because I know you have insights on the mind-body nexus and how we optimize opportunity in adulthood.
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks to the initiative, and thank you, Dr. Pecorelli. As you know, we just finished a 5-year trial working on mental health of women who were about to give birth, and it was about creating the optimal fetal environment, but what you're bringing in is that it goes even before that, which I think is fantastic. So I just wanted to start by saying that in the United States, at least, it is very likely that someone who is seeking mental health care for depression, anxiety, or something more severe could receive care for 3 months, a year, or 2 years without ever being given a single recommendation around nutrition, fitness, or mind-body approaches. Not only is this possible, this is absolutely the norm. The norm is that you would not receive these recommendations. And so this is something that we at the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation want to change. We want to change the way people treat mental health. And so there are several approaches to doing that. One that we're focusing on is increasing the evidence base for the ways that people understand how this works. But we know that just giving people information, whether you're talking about the patient or the provider, is not enough. I can give you a recommendation that says, you know, if you would walk 20 minutes a day, you'll feel mentally and emotionally and psychologically healthier throughout each day. We all sort of know that through our personal experience, but how hard is it for someone with depression or with strong anxiety, especially social anxiety, to follow such a recommendation? So I think it's very important that not only do we create trustworthy information about the kinds of nutrition and wellness and fitness practices that could lead to better mental health, but we've got to accompany those with an ecosystem of change that really gives people the scaffolding they need to be able to implement such recommendations. We think that, hey, if I just tell you how to achieve better wellness, then you'll do it. And so many of us know in this room that's not always the case. Not everybody is as, what did he say this morning, obsessed with health as we are in this room. And so I think that every single approach to increasing mental and physical wellness through these holistic approaches has to be wrapped around in an ecosystem of change, which includes the biological, the psychological, the social, and the spiritual. And even if the word spiritual doesn't completely resonate with you, you could replace it with the existential. What is the purpose? What is the meaning? What is the deeper parts of people's being? And we've talked a little bit this morning about Maslow's hierarchy. And one thing I would invite you to consider is that even though those self-actualization or self-transcendent needs are at the top of the pyramid, we're also learning through research now that you can equally flip Maslow's hierarchy on its head, and people's sense of belonging and purpose and meaning, mental stability and vitality actually lie underneath their ability to become physically healthier or to become more productive at work or to be able to create things. So we must pay equal attention to people's mental well-being as we do to their physical well-being. We must approach their mental well-being holistically, bio, psycho, social, spiritual, and we must also provide wraparound help with how somebody might implement, let's say, a walking strategy. So instead of saying, Mom, if you want to feel less depressed, walk 20 minutes every morning, you say, Mom, each one of us kids and nephews and nieces are going to come over with you and walk with you at 8:30 every morning. Completely different. You're adding the social component. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Some of you may have caught the news about the Nobel Prize for Economics, and it was awarded to 3 people in Boston, 2 economists from MIT and 1 from Harvard, and it was for exactly this kind of work, of breaking big, complex problems like poverty down into very small, manageable things like how to incentivize people to take their medicines so that they don't fall sick, how to provide subsidies for children in a small area to go to school so that you reduce lack of education in girls, and girls go on to be more productive, and poverty is always reduced with female education. So exactly breaking this these challenges down into bite-sized, manageable, behaviorally modifiable units is what is recognized as the way forward in health economics, educational economics, development economics. Thank you, Cassie. Chicco,
yes.
You've got some points. As I mentioned, Chicco and Lara have gone from rural Bali and the rice fields to urban Hong Kong and an urban destination, absolutely amazing cutting-edge center, and they found themselves now, of course, in societal meltdown. And we'd like to hear from you, your insights in taking meaningful wellness to urban society.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, Gerry, because you have been close to us in many ways, and also being part of the Mental Wellness Initiative has inspired us to bring these pathways into a urban wellness concept and really have an impact on people. We had the privilege to go, as you mentioned, from Bali, where we have a wellness destination and where we work with people for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but then these people mostly go back to their cities where they live. And so when we had the possibility to express ourselves in a place like Hong Kong, this was, at the beginning, was shocking for ourselves, because it was like, what are we doing there? You know, it's a different jungle, but it's been an incredible experience. And we had the opportunity to bring these pathways, inspirational pathways, meditation, mindfulness, sound healing, tea ceremonies, into programs, into classes, and also into one-on-one session, group session, corporate programs. So it's a very important part of our mission. Today is a challenging time, and we see that it's even more important to engage, to build a sense of community. And so we are really looking forward to have more programs around mental wellness, as they're much needed.
Thank you, Chicco. Interestingly, the company that invested in Fivelements and worked with them to do this urban destination is the same company that owns a chain of fitness. Well, it owns fitness chains. So Fitness First, what's the other one?
Celebrity Fitness.
Celebrity Fitness and so on, which are known in this region. And you can see the owners of a fitness chain investing in Asian wellness traditions, meditation, tea ceremonies, massage. They have a gym as well, but this is the new face of wellness with fitness embedded, not fitness as wellness. It's a very different paradigm, and we wanted to share that with you. Thank you, Chicco. And Alina will now share with us Renee's message from Colorado. She's well, she sends her warm wishes to you all, but she's dealing with shock and she's dealing with very severe whiplash, as is David, so we send them our best wishes. And Renee, as I mentioned, has specialized in wellness in the corporate sector, and we'll hear about that perspective. Please, Alina.
Thank you, Gerry. I'm actually very happy to do this on behalf of Renee because I've gotten to know her, and as everyone knows, huge bulk of our lives are spent at work. And Renee and I have had various conversations over time about what this means, and we align on a lot of different things, and I'm happy to summarize some of the most important points that she shared with us. So she breaks it down into 4 different areas, and she talks about it's important how we frame things, how we look at it. The second part is how we broaden our views, how we address what she calls all levels, and finally, what does leadership mean, specifically conscious leadership. Within the area of framing it, she says that one way of framing the mental wellness challenges we face as employees, what she calls the 5 Ds, disengagement, disenchantment, disconnection, distraction, and disease, is what she believes they are all appropriate responses to ways of working and workplaces that are not designed to optimize human thriving and potential. And what she believes is important in broadening our views, she says we also have the opportunity to broaden our thinking about mental wellness. It is not just about preventing, reducing, or supporting mental health challenges, although that is important. It is about cultivating true psychological well-being and human potential. For instance, she's been considering how you measure various factors with leaders and organizations, and find that these factors, such as awe, appreciation, vision and purpose, wholeness, learning and growing, as well as seeking new perspectives, are key to psychological well-being. And then in the third case, she then talks about what she believes is addressing the levels. She says, we can take steps to profoundly support mental wellness at work on at least 3 different levels. And she specifies self, team, and organization. And then she also adds, I could also put in the level of society. On the level of self, of course, our lifestyle behaviors matter. Eating, moving, resting, breathing. Yet so does our relationship to ourselves. Are we personally operating out of fear and reactivity, or out of self-empowerment and inspiration and even love? Our insufficiency and lack, or out of a sense of enoughness and abundance? Our inner relationship to ourselves is key to our mental wellness and part of our development as human beings. Then this beautifully ties into leadership, and she states, fundamental to all of this is conscious leadership that includes leadership of our own lives, as well as the leadership we bring to our organizations. Leadership as defined by how we use our life force to affect results, whether in a formal or informal role that we may have. Leaders set the tone for the team or the organization, and therein set the conditions in which people show up at their best selves or not. Reactive, fear-based leadership will usually lead to reactive, fear-based ways of operating. All of us as leaders must commit to being on the journey of our own evolution so that we may in turn have a greater capacity to empower and support mentally well environments for others. The research shows that when we do this, we also see better business results.
Thank you, Alina, and thank you, Renee. I think the point that Renee always makes is that wellness at work is not about programs, it's about culture. And culture has to start with inner values, lived values. And I think that comes through with what she said. Panelists, you've heard this morning, it sounds like Project Runway, doesn't it? Panelists, now. You've heard this morning that the Global Wellness Institute is going to be doing a big focus next year on mental wellness. Catherine is here in the front row. Thank you, Catherine. And is Ophelia here? Maybe not. She's in another room. Well, she drew the short straw. Never mind. But we're really thrilled about this. And you're going to be focusing on the economy around mental wellness, particularly. And this really links in with the big picture of the Global Wellness Institute of doing everything to minimize preventable illness. If we understand the economy, if we understand the vectors that are contributing, in our white paper we tried to map pathways with evidence based around self-care, because there will never be enough mental health professionals to deal with demand. What I'd like to ask you all, given what's coming up next year, is from the perspective you've just expressed to us, and once we've had the comments, we're going to open to the floor. Given that there's going to be a big focus on mental wellness, Sergio, what would you like to see in that report around the economy of mental wellness, the ecosystem of mental wellness, the priorities around mental wellness associated with the first 1,000 days of life?
Since you spoke about the 3 Nobel Prizes, I would like to quote another Nobel Prize, also for economics, in 1998, Amartya Sen, from India. And he said that the most powerful preventive site is the womb. And if we did that, this would be incredible both for low and for high resources countries. which means, in a few words, that behaviors, correct lifestyles, in a few words, what we heard this morning, the whole morning, about, we call it the wellness, but in fact is how we behave. And so I would like to have this. And also I would like to recognize the parental, father and mother, responsibility for the offspring mental wellness. Because this is very important. And one should use these principles for education. And I think that we should stress very much that we are not doing enough to have our children from kindergarten up to university understand, know, and be educated, not instructed, educated about this.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Amartya Sen, who, as Sergio pointed out, received the Nobel Prize in 1998 for his work on development economics, took a similar approach of breaking problems down, looking at the behavioral aspects that contributed to economic issues and the resolution of them. And I think I had the good fortune to have dinner at his home when he was Master of Trinity College in Cambridge. And one of the things that came through talking with him, having studied his work at Harvard and at Oxford, was his enormous humanity and compassion around the issues that he was working on. Sergio, I know you have the same feeling, and that passion must translate, as you say, into education. We mentioned lifespan wellness, and I often feel that the two big gaps, there are probably many others, but the two that jump out to me in education of children, one is health, which includes mental health and relationships. There's nothing taught about this. We don't know about the microbiome, about gut healthy, heart healthy, nutrition, of exercise, and so on. We don't know anything about that from our education. And the other, which relates to this issue of breaking small problems down, as the economists do, is finance. Kids are never taught how to manage their finances. They might be taught about economics, but they're never taught about how to manage their finances. And we see that economics, personal economics, and mental wellness are very strongly linked. And so I think your idea of bringing this in education, throughout the educational course, of the role of parents in health, mental health, and so on, is absolutely critical. It's a kind of no-brainer, and we have to ask, why isn't it there? Cassie, I'd like to ask you, from your perspective, for the big focus next year on mental wellness for the Global Wellness Institute, what would you want to see in there?
Well, I do think we have to take this ecosystem approach. So what I'd love to see are attention to four things. One is, what are the contexts for mental wellness? That means physical contexts, environments. What are the communities of mental wellness? Context and community. What are the tools that we can use to increase mental wellness? So this could be digital, technological, or more analog tools. And then what are the practices? Contexts, communities, tools, and practices, meaning what are the fitness practices, what are the nutrition practices, what are the mind-body practices, and what are the medical practices that we could bring to wellness? What may be the most important would be changing the story of what mental wellness is, changing the definition of mental wellness, going far beyond just a lack of symptoms, but into mental thriving and mental vitality. The other way I'd like to see us change the story that could be addressed, I think, in this report is, how do we reduce the stigma? And I'd like us all to ask ourselves, I was thinking about the opening reception last night, and if someone showed up at the opening reception and said, I feel tired, or my back hurts, or I feel a little bit of a cold coming on, we might all, we probably would have flooded them with all kinds of things they could do. How would we have responded differently if someone at the table said, I feel hopeless, I feel depressed, I feel anxious? Now, in this group, we're pretty enlightened, so we might have given them a lot of love, but not in every group. In most groups out there in the world, people would either say, oh, wow, why did you share that? Or I'm not sure what to do. So how can we bring mental wellness into the same compassion zone as physical wellness?
Thank you very much, Cassie. Chicco.
Yes. For me, I'd like to see research and change the paradigm of what workplace is, and take this workplace as an opportunity for healing. Everybody works. Work has created, I think, many issues. It can be a dangerous place in many ways. And I think if we can use these many hours that are spent in this space and insert wellness, conscious leadership, I think there is an opportunity to shift the planet and to shift the leaders. So I have a hope that that wellness can take a big role. Already is entering into companies, into corporates, but we have a hope that it can take the leadership within the companies.
Yes, thank you, Chicco.
Authentically.
Yeah, and I think Renee is saying the same thing as you there. Our next door neighbor to Singapore is Malaysia, and many of you will know that Malaysia has a new prime minister who was the previous prime minister as well, and who was elected back into prime ministership at the age of 93. He's now 94. There are regularly pictures of him riding a bicycle and exercising, and he's starting with the Ministry of Health because he's a doctor, and his deputy prime minister is also a doctor. They've required all staff in the Ministry of Health to stop whatever they're doing morning and afternoon and exercise for 5 to 10 minutes. And there are leaders appointed to lead that exercise program, and I've been there when that's happened. And you feel fantastic after that short exercise break. And this is coming from a 94-year-old prime minister who's a doctor, who's just taking the lead. So I think that the point about leadership that you make, Chicco, is extremely important in this equation as well. Alina, can you distill any recommendation there from what Renee has said that we could look at going forward? I think you may have said it already.
Well, the thing that comes to mind, also based on the conversations that we've had, is that it starts very much at the top. So if the leader is not self-aware, and aware of the other, if they are not conscious, in the Eastern tradition is the witness position of the self, then how can he or she possibly lead? It's impossible. And this is the most important takeaway from all of this if one wants to create a truly holistic, integrated workplace wellness environment. If not, it doesn't work.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And it really goes to the title of the talk, where the personal is the public. Without working on the personal, there is no public impact of meaning. Yeah.
And it's challenging because you have to jump over your shadow.
Thank you. We now have 8 minutes for questions from you all, or contributions of any kind. Yes, Professor Dunn, would you please identify yourself as Professor Malcolm Dunn of Sydney University?
No, I'm just Malcolm Dunn from Sydney University. Thanks, Gerry. A couple of things I'd like to see, and really building on what Cassandra said first, of the context and the ecosystem and the global volatility that we have at the moment, and to see that as an opportunity for change and to drive change from that, but to then really understand, and I loved your discussion of scaffolding the change. So if we want change to occur, what has to be different in the ecosystem? And I'm a student of the complexity sciences and wicked problems, and I think that's a classical wicked problem. So breaking it down to its element, and that is the leader in an organization who has inordinate power. Now, how do we grab their mind share and how do we help them change. What I've seen of those leaders, they're trapped in a paradigm of the existing ecosystem. That's the way the industry works, that's the way global markets work. So I think we need to just try and look at how do we enable that change. I don't know if you've read any of Jennifer Garvey-Berger's work on, and Lisa Lay on immunity to change. So that's where the scaffolding part, I think, becomes really important. So ironically, the circularity of it to change the individual, the system can help them change as well. And so how do we create that predisposition for the people in the system to walk with that leader and help them lead differently? So that's what I would like to see. And it's a bit of a mixture of three.
Thank you very much, Mal.
Renee's piece.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to
I'd love
say
to be involved in it in some way as well.
Professor Dunn is at the University of Sydney Business School and is specializing in leadership development. Thank you very much. I think we'll have all the comments from the floor. Charles Davidson and Mark Cohen in that order. Charles Davidson, would you like to identify yourself?
I'm Charles Davidson.
We thought that.
No.
What else are you?
Peninsula Hot Springs in Australia.
Yes, sir.
And a hot spring in New Zealand. And
Right.
a couple in Australia.
Yes,
And I'm the chair of the Hot Spring Initiative.
correct.
I'm feeling that as a group, all the people in the room and all of us who run businesses, that we have a little bit of responsibility. And I think I call it corporate responsibility to society. And it's beyond our responsibility to our shareholders and even for our staff and even for our customers. I think it goes beyond that. And I also call it going off the reservation. And it's looking after your community. And I think there's things that we can do in our local communities that help our staff and ourselves think beyond, creating community by doing things. We're trying to do some things, which is like corporate yoga programs for our businesses around our area. We're starting a wellness festival in our area for our local town, and we're trying to start local and then to share anything we can learn to hopefully it becomes viral. That our next town will do the same thing, and the next town, and the next town. Community gardens is another thing which we're starting.
Fantastic.
We're getting our horticultural team are going out into our local community, building community gardens for the local community to help, particularly seniors, have a way to interact with each other, which is not in mass media. They can actually be there growing vegetables, and they can talk to each other about whether it's carrots that are in season next week, and we're going to have too many, Jean, we're going to have too many carrots this week. Maybe we can give some away to Betty, so it's just a way of connecting. But I think when you're doing the study next year, if we can think about how can we as companies get off the reservation and outside of our own bubble.
Terrific.
And so.
Thank you, Charles. Inspiring. Well done. Professor Mark Cohen.
I think people know me already. I'm actually fascinated to see how Catherine are going to break this down, because mental health is...
Catherine's taking copious notes here.
I'm really interested in environmental health, and one of the issues is if we don't see there's an environment in the future, how do we have hope for the next generation? So the whole Extinction Rebellion and climate change is a huge factor, because you can do all that healthy lifestyle things, but if you don't think you've got a future, your mental health is suffering. But the other really key thing with your environment is microbial health. And now there's evidence to say that the microbes in the soil communicate with the microbes in our gut, and that you're inoculated at birth with your microbiome, and your microbiome actually has a big factor on depression and mental health. So, and the other thing is your home has a huge impact, and the microbial communities in your home, and the obvious one is mold, and water-damaged buildings causes a lot of brain fog, chronic fatigue, a whole lot of serious inflammatory illnesses. But the estimates are about 50% of all the retail stock, the domestic houses on Earth, are not well built and have mold as a problem. So, again, if you're doing all the right lifestyle things and eating the right food, but your home environment is microbially unsafe, that impacts on your mental health. So, mental health impacts real estate, impacts on the future of the climate, and these are super important issues. But
Thank you, Mark. Did you want to say something, Sergio?
No, I just wanted to add one thing. Think of this. We had 2 publications last year and 2 years ago from Mexico City, where air pollution, you know, as it is, the worst city in the world, where PM 2.5 was so high that there were 72 cases of Alzheimer's disease from 6 months old to 12 years old children, okay? This just to give you, I mean, an idea.
Sergio, I'm speechless. We have a question from back here.
Yes, hello. I'm Patricia from Hong Kong, Patricia Slavinska from Reempower Tech. I'm organizing one-day retreats for different kind of target groups, connecting business, mind, and self-awareness and body. For me, it is amazing to hear the inspirational insights from you all, actually, what you are doing, where we should look into the future about mental health awareness to increase the awareness, basically. However, yet as a millennial, I would say that it is super important to put our focus already at school for the students, for the because obviously we as parents or we as founders, yes, it's important to look at our employees or at work or at business. However, who is looking at the children or at the students that are all the time in all the devices and don't know how to communicate anymore with each other, with themselves, with the environments and the surroundings?
Thank you very much. There's new research that's just come out looking at happiness. Children who are on devices 5 hours or so a day are significantly less happy than children who have far less time, 2 hours or less a day. And it's just the difference in time on devices. So it's an extremely important point. And the point about education, I think, is one we can close on, because we're almost out of time, but a lifespan approach to wellness has to start, as Sergio says, preconception, in utero, but must continue on through the education system. Why shouldn't we be taught how to live well? Thank you all very much. Thank you, panelists.